The cost of EpiPens are on the rise. Families are being put in a tough spot as they routinely depend on the device to deliver life-saving medicine if their child has a bad reaction.
The cost of the epinephrine auto-injector has increased by almost 500% over the last 7 years. And joining us now is Martin Shkreli, founder and former CEO of Turing Pharmaceuticals, a pharmaceutical exec. In just following your Twitter feed, it feels like I've seen things on both sides, hitting Mylan for what they're charging, yet also saying they should be able to charge what they want. How do you see this with the EpiPen?
It's complicated. You know, it's really difficult. Just same thing with my situation last year on almost the same topic, a drug price increase. And I think that, you know, on one hand, you know, we all want someone to blame, and the drug company seems like it's the easiest group to blame. But I actually think the blame is a little different in this situation. Mylan is not, you know, this company that's making a ton of money, surprisingly. They're a generics company, so they sell generic drugs at low prices, 90% off sometimes. And if I just look at their financial statements, and they make 8 cents for every dollar they sell. That's not a lot. That's not a lot by any business standards. So the idea that they're this, you know, big company that's gouging people and making tons of money, I don't think that's quite true. But at the same time, of course, we all have to have sympathy for the family and the patient that they can't afford an EpiPen. So I think the answer is actually the fault here, and I don't love to blame my payers. The fault here lies in the insurance companies, because ultimately EpiPen is actually a bargain. At $300 a shot, it's $600 and they make you buy the 2-pack, but it's $300 a shot. It saves you all of the costs of going to the emergency room, going to the ambulance. That just an ambulance ride can be $1,000, right? So the idea that one shot at $300 can save you $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 is actually a pretty good bargain. And if you're an insurer, you should love to pay for this stuff.
But I think when people hear this, you're talking about a life-saving pen. Yeah. So there's no bargain. There's life or death is how they see it.
Well, if the alternative is a $20,000 trip to the ER where they hit you with adrenaline and epinephrine there, $300 in your own home is a good deal. And the point is that the patient should never pay a dime. You know, if I ruled the world and I could set up all the systems, insurers, if they were smart, they'd want to do this tomorrow. They'd say, you know what, I want to pay for every EpiPen, every penny. I don't want patients or their families to pay a cent, because it saves me money. Because then I'd have to pay $20,000. Maybe 1 out of 10 times someone can't afford it. Well, they're going to end up in the ER anyway, and then someone's going to have to pay $20,000 for someone to resuscitate.
All right, so there was similar outrage when you increased the price of Daraprim from $1,350 to $750. Some people say, look, what's happening with the EpiPen is no different. You clearly didn't see it that way. What's different?
Well, let's see. Mylan is a generic company. So I was surprised to see them do this, because they have about 400 drugs. Turing is 2. For 398 or 99 of their drugs, their goal in life, their raison d'etre, is to lower prices. They sell Lipitor for 60% off, I just checked. They sell Plavix for 60% off. They sell antidepressants for 80, 90% off. So their job is to lower costs for all of us.
Do they make money off of those when you're talking about those?
They make a really small amount of money. So on average, I think they're making like 5 cents for every dollar. And for EpiPen, maybe they're making 30 cents or 40 cents. And it's just ironic to me, like the second this company has a hit product, we all want to jump on them and kill them. And it's like they've been waiting for one product where they can make a little bit of money. And to me, it's not an egregious price, because it's $300. And I know that it's different from consumer products, but for $300, my iPhone's more expensive. And there are other things that we pay for that are more expensive.
But you don't need an iPhone, and you might need the product. So how do you morally justify that?
$300 is not the kind of number where I say, this is a nightmare.
It is for some people.
For some people it is, and if you don't have insurance, I think that's the question. Sure, if the insurance companies were to pay for it.
Let me just say something real quick. If $300 is a nightmare for you, you should be on Medicaid. There should be a government-sponsored system that says you're impoverished. Because if $300 is a nightmare for you, you're close to that line. And if that doesn't work, the company should set up a system and pay for it. Mylan's a generics company, so they're not used to setting these things up, and I think that's probably a little bit of the problem they've been having.
And one of the things I know, when you did it, it was an immediate price hike.
Yes.
And here with EpiPen, it's been slow.
They try to sneak it in.
Yeah. I mean, is that part of it too, that all of a sudden somebody went, wait, the cost has gotten up to this amount?
When in the Turing boardroom, when we were trying to decide, you know, whether to take it 50x price increase in one shot or do it in subsequent shots.
5,000%.
50x is 5,000%. Yeah. And there's a bunch of executives who said, Martin, if we just do this a little bit at a time, no one will notice. And I said, no, they'll notice. It's not going to matter. And here, you see people noticing it. And here they're doing 15% every 6 months, which adds up quite quickly, and it compounds. So it seems less than it really is. It's really a lot. And I think that, they have shareholders. A lot of people it sounds like the most...
It's a business. In an area where people feel a lot of times it shouldn't be a business.
Right. Exactly. No, I'm going to say something insensitive, and I hope you forgive me, but everyone's thinking about the patients' families. Nobody's thinking about Mylan.
Well, I think a lot of people would say, look, it's a pharmaceutical company, and they may not make a lot of money off this one particular medicine, but let's not think that these pharmaceutical companies are
CBS and NBC have higher margins than Mylan. And Mylan makes life-saving drugs, and media companies make content. So at the end of the day, this isn't a company that's doing that well. And I think that we want so bad for these medicines to be prized and holy and above, kind of the normal laws of capitalism. And I think that's not such a bad idea. So what I think should happen is the government should run their own drug company. And for off-patent medicines, like utilities, right? The government runs utilities because if there's a Martin Shkreli of water or energy, he would charge you too much for you to live in your house. So the government says we need to make sure that doesn't happen. So we're gonna regulate the prices of these goods, and the government can do that with generic drugs. As long as they don't mess with innovative new medicine and don't get in the way. I think that would be a pretty good idea.
It was interesting, just from scrolling Twitter again and going back. I know you wrote that some of these life-saving drugs that we're finding are because of the competition, because of the high prices.
Yeah.
If somebody sees, and it stood out to me, how is that? You referred to MS specifically.
Yeah, I'm really happy you asked about that.
Saying that because of the high prices, we now have better drugs.
Yeah, it's a little nuts. There's a small company called Biogen. It's now a very big company. And they sold a drug for multiple sclerosis. People used to laugh at multiple sclerosis in the drug industry. It's not a laughing matter if you have it. And I have a great friend in Brazil who has it.
Right.
The first MS drug, called Avnex, barely works. It really kind of stinks, and it has terrible side effects. But they started selling it for $30,000 a year. And before you knew it, you could actually make a lot of money doing that. The old way of pharmaceuticals was to sell pills for $500 for a year, or $1,000 or something like that, closer to the price of toothpaste and stuff like that. And then companies like Biogen said, well, for these really niche specialty drugs, we can make the patients happy. There aren't that many MS patients relative to cholesterol patients, but if we have a higher price, we can actually afford to make some profit, in fact, make a lot of profit, and have a drug for MS. So they did that and had this first kind of crappy drug, and a bunch of other drug companies said, hey, I can make a better MS drug than that, and I can make $1 billion. So now we've got 7 MS drugs. They're fantastic. And my friend Pedro in Brazil, hope you're watching, he is now on the new souped up MS drugs that, in fact, Pedro sat down with me and he said, what's going to happen to me? You're a drug expert. What's going to happen to me? And I said, you're going to live a long, super healthy life.
So that competition, in your estimation, helped to develop these other drugs that now offer your friend and other people who are afflicted with this disease more opportunities to get better.
Pfizer and Merck thought MS was not worth their time.
All right, let me ask you about your case.
Sure.
The prosecutors are alleging that your old company, Retrofin, that it was a Ponzi-like scheme, that you raided your former company to pay off clients. They say you also tried to conceal your ownership of the company. What's your response to that?
I think it's absurd. So we have a court date scheduled, a trial by jury scheduled for next year. I have absolutely zero fear that I'll be convicted. I think I'll be acquitted. I've got my great lawyer, Ben Brafman, who's won much harder cases. And
you don't think this is a tough case for him?
I think the problem with the legal system is that all the cases are hard. The conviction rates are very high. The thing about Ben, though, is he's quite good, and the system makes it so that you are sort of, they really try to force you to plead guilty. And that's 90% of cases end up in guilty pleas because it's so painful, it's so emotionally draining. In fact, there's a hedge fund manager who committed suicide just 2 months ago after being charged on a Monday with insider trading. He killed himself on Tuesday.
But the prosecutors say you lost hedge fund investors' money and then you raided Retrofin for $11 million in cash and stock to pay clients who were upset and disgruntled.
It's so nonsensical. I think the prosecution should be embarrassed. They barely did their homework. And if you actually look at the investors, and you can call them yourself, they made triple their money in the hedge fund. Triple. In fact, these investors testified that if Martin started another hedge fund, I'd be the first investor tomorrow. So I think the government's we've caught them in a number of lies, we've caught them in a number of bad behaviors, and we're going to stick to them.
Why do they keep coming after you?
You know, I just can't fathom. I guess it might have something to do with me being very handsome, very wealthy, and very funny.
Your attorney can't be glad that you're out here.
No, I think Ben understands that. You know, I'm not unlike. I'm very different from a lot of his other clients. And if you've noticed, I now walk down the streets of Manhattan. People ask me for autographs. They want selfies. I have a lot of fans, and I think that especially in a city like New York, where the birthplace of Donald Trump, and if you're old enough to know, in the 70s and 80s, people kind of adored Trump in many ways, and this is a city where success is prized. It is a city, if you make it here, you can make it anywhere. I'm the child of immigrants that are janitors from Brooklyn. I've made myself into an enormous fortune, and you know, I think that you know, sometimes
you can run for president.
Sometimes you can.
That's what you're learning.
Why not?
You also, I mean, one of the things, and we're moving to a little lighter subject here, but you bought that WuTang album that had 31, I think, cuts on it.
Yeah.
You paid $2 million for it, although there's a little bit of a feud between some of the guys, Ghostface Killah and some of the others. What's going on?
I'm friendly with most of them.
You are?
I think that you know, he's always been the different one in the group, and I think that. Really, the way I look at that, and I think a lot of people misunderstand it, is that I view that as a $2 million donation to the WuTang Clan, a $2 million donation to rap music. Because the idea that this album's worth $2 million it's just not. But I wanted to underscore the importance of this artwork. There's a lot of people who don't respect rap music, and being a huge music fan, this is the kind of statement that this is important as a Picasso, this is important as a Monet and a Manet, and people don't view music as that important, but in reality, it sort of is like medicine in that we don't truly understand its value until you take it away. And in many ways, you know, there's a lot of parallels between that. And you know, I think the WuTang Clan, if they're upset with some of them are upset with the process, they shouldn't have started it.
There's one other thing, and this is literally straying even further away. You talk about being upset. Harambe, who is the gorilla that was killed at the Cincinnati Zoo. You on Twitter talk about caring so much about him, that the life meant so much. The Cincinnati Zoo has come out and asked people to stop using memes, and you've used a lot of memes in social media. How is that respecting Harambe by doing that when they're asking to stop in order to honor him?
Sure. So as a sort of moonlighting scientist, you know, I work a lot with non-human primates. We call them in the labs NHPs. So any rhesus monkeys, capuchins, all the way up to the higher order species. I have, my brother and I especially, have this deep fondness for animals that are so close to humans, so remarkably close. In fact, there are bonobos that can even communicate with you on a one-to-one level and tell jokes and be sarcastic and funny and even flirt with you. It's unbelievable how human-like these creatures are. And the idea that we just shot this animal in cold blood, and we don't have to debate, you know, whether or not that was a good idea.
To save a child is the argument.
Right.
Just if you're going to say you shot him in cold blood, to save a child that was.
To be honest, it's painful to even talk about this. But let's get back to the issue, which is that in this country, I don't think we value non-human primate life the way we should. I think these animals actually should have rights, believe it or not.
But if they did, Martin, they wouldn't be able to be used in the pharmaceutical industry, which is what you were talking about.
I don't think they should be. You know, I do a lot of I've overseen the death of thousands of these animals, whether they be dogs or rats, and many times non-human primates.
Wow, you've overseen the death
Every
of these
single
animals?
pharmaceutical executive has. Pfizer probably kills 1 million animals a year, and it's painful. You know, if that doesn't eat at you, you know, I don't know what will.
When you talk about that, it feels like it is it's a moral decision. It's how you feel morally. And yet when you talk about drug prices, when we were talking earlier, and I know you're saying it should go to the insurance companies, it's up to the insurance companies, but why not have that same moral compassion for the way the system is right now?
I have more moral compassion. You know, I mean, I think that there's, for instance, 7,000 rare diseases. There's only 5 or 6 companies in the world that care about those diseases. The Pfizers, the Mercks, the AstraZenecas, they care about the big sellers. But there's dying kids, friends of mine, like the Kulzer brothers, 3 kids with pecan. I invented the first drug ever for pecan. And these 3 kids, they're staring at their death sentence. They're teenagers. And I'm fighting my butt off to save them. And I need money to do that. Investors don't care for these little diseases and so forth. So I think I have a lot more compassion than most people think. That's why I'm in the drug business. But at the same time, non-human primates are kind of these pretty precious animals. And that's why we care so much about Harambe. You know, this is he's so human-like and so close to our hearts that I think we should honor his memory, and this is a good time for activists to think harder about should some animals have rights.
So are you going to stop memeing Harambe?
I think what I'm trying to do, no, is a short answer. But what I'm trying to do is elevate the respect we have for these animals. They are truly our cousins. And you can see that in their eyes. And to me, the idea that we're going to bring in these animals into our world as peers, I think is a good thing.
All right, Martin Shkreli, thanks so much for stopping by and
Appreciate
answering our
it.
questions. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.